chairwoman's motion. The yeas are 129, the nays are 5. The House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 30. Congratulations.
A bill to define anti-Semitism in Georgia law overwhelmingly passes in both chambers. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this 9th day of the Georgia legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. Our Capitol Report will fill you in on the debate surrounding the anti-Semitism bill coming up. In the studio, our guest tonight will talk about election bills. Georgia's last statewide election was in November, but the presidential primary is coming up in March. Some lawmakers would like to see changes to the voting system and more. Also, a few years ago, the legislature cracked down on drag racers with specific laws against the drivers. Now there's an effort to charge the people who watch street racing. And a Henry County Sheriff's Corporal shot last year survived, but is paying a high price financially for his injuries. A senator joins us to talk about how he wants to fully compensate law enforcement officers injured in the line of duty. But first, an overview of what happened today at the Gold Dome from Capitol correspondent Sarah Callis.
Hi, Donna. It was an emotional day 9 in the House and the Senate as lawmakers in both chambers passed a bill that may be used in hate crime prosecutions. A controversial bill that was first passed last year in the House, but failed to make its way through the Senate, was amended and brought back to the Senate floor today. HB 30. The bill defines anti-Semitism for use in conjunction with Georgia's hate crime and anti-discrimination laws. The controversy was about using the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism in the bill, and whether it stifles a right to free speech when criticizing the state of Israel.
With this legislation, we can affirm our commitment to promoting an environment where Georgians, all Georgians, regardless of their race, religion, or national origin, can live their lives free of fear of discrimination.
The bill was supported and opposed by members of both parties.
I will be voting no on HB 30 today because I personally know what it is to be a minority voice within a minority group. I know what it is to have people who share my race, my ethnicity, and my religion, and they choose to ignore my voice. Choose to tell me that I'm not Christian enough or black enough because of my deeply held convictions that don't align with the loudest voices.
Senator, with the precedent that hate crimes legislation presents to us, should we not create a definition for every religion?
No, Senator, I don't think so. And part of that lies in the fact that this is part of the challenge of identifying anti-Semitic behavior. It's not, Senator, just religious-based. It's not just country-based. It's not just national origin-based. It's not just race-based. The Jewish community has been increasingly vulnerable because we've not been able to sufficiently identify it.
I have been discriminated against my whole life, both as a black person and a woman. And in every moment, black people or women ask for equality. The Jewish community stood hand in hand with us. They marched during the Civil Rights Movement, and they helped demand that women be treated like people. Today, I return their favor and stand with them. To destroy this poison of hate, we must all stand and fight together.
This does not chill speech. This is not an anti-speech bill. You can still say whatever you want to under the color of the law. But then if you say these things and have a certain belief, target someone or a group of individuals, then it's a crime.
The bill passed 44-6, with 5 Democrats and 1 Republican voting against it. The Senate also took up the task of voting on 3 Kemp appointments to the state's Judicial Qualification Board, including former U.S. Congressman Bob Barr. Their appointments were passed 29-20. But SR 44, a resolution to appoint former state Senator Rick Jeffries to the state election board, was more contentious. with Democrats objecting to his outspoken belief surrounding the 2020 election.
Giving an outspoken election denier power on the state elections board undermines the integrity of Georgia's elections. Let me be clear what I mean when I say an election denier. An election denier is a person who, despite all facts and all evidence, continued pushing dangerous, baseless conspiracy theories to undermine faith in the 2020 election.
Kemp's appointment was passed 32-17 along party lines. Governor Kemp also appointed John Vervier to be the election board chairman, which garnered more unanimous support. The Waffle House executive's confirmation easily passed 48-1.
Isn't it true there must be a lot of IHOPs in Northwest Georgia? Obviously, the senator wouldn't have voted for that resolution.
He looks like he can put down a pancake or two, so.
In the House, representatives unanimously voted for Vervier, but the big news came when the House passed House Bill 30.
Folks, I want you to join with me and show the nation who we are as Georgians and stand up to this anti-Semitic behavior once and for all.
Like the Senate, representatives raised concerns about the bill's free speech implications. The bill passed 129-5. Speaker of the House John Burns praised the multi-year effort to get the bill over the finish line.
Hate will not rule this state. Hate will not rule this House. We've taken that stand. We've worked hard at it. We've persisted. We're very proud that we have this opportunity to come and show you exactly what we stand for.
State Representative Esther Panich, the legislature's only Jewish member, says she is overwhelmed by the support of her colleagues.
There are 150,000 Jews in Georgia that now feel like they have been seen and heard and acknowledged and protected. And for that, I will be forever in your gratitude.
Also in House news, Representative Pedro Marin, Georgia's longest-serving Latino lawmaker, announced his retirement. Marin served in the House for 22 years and will retire at the end of the session.
To all my friends who came today to share in this joyous occasion, your presence warms my heart. Here today is an example of the diverse community I have become a part of it. I am so proud to call many of you my brothers and sisters. Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much.
On day 10, the Senate is expected to vote on creating a committee to investigate Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. I'll have the latest tomorrow evening. Back to you, Donna.
Sarah, thank you for that report. On March 12th, Georgia will hold its first statewide election this year, the presidential primary. Lawmakers have filed several election-related bills, and we will talk about a few of them tonight. Joining me are two attorneys, Republican Representative Bob Leverett of Elberton. He's chairman of the House Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee. And Democratic Representative Syra Draper of Atlanta. She's a civil rights attorney. Welcome to Lawmakers to both of you.
Thank you.
So, Chairman Leverett, we're going to start with you. You're co-sponsor of HB 976, which would require optical scan voting systems to use paper with a visible watermark as a security feature. Tell us about it.
Well, this is Chairman LaHood's bill. He's the chief sponsor, but we already have a ceramic coating on the ballots that we use, and so there is a security feature already in place there, but it's not visible to the naked eye. You have to use a wand to perceive the coating. So the bill seeks to require a watermark to be placed on all the ballots so the public will be able to see the ballot, see that watermark, and know that it's a proper ballot, legitimate ballot.
Yeah, and people, I don't think, realize that there's a ceramic coating on their ballots.
That's correct. I don't think they do, because it's not intended to be visible. You have to use a special device to take a look at it. So this bill, Chairman LaHood collaborated with the Secretary of State's office. Director Sterling actually came to our committee meeting, which I appreciate him taking the time to do. And we talked some about the costs and the different sort of logistical features of it, but I think it's very workable. The costs are very manageable. The state would bear the cost, so it wouldn't be forcing another cost on our counties. So it seems like a really good way to instill some additional public confidence, a very kind of low-cost, high-value move.
And it could be ready by March 12th.
I don't know that it would be ready by the primary, by the presidential preference primary, but it would certainly be ready for the general election.
Okay. I want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm generally not opposed to the bill. I do think as a general matter, when we're talking about making policy based on additional security needs in elections, that does raise a red flag. I mean, we all want security in our elections, but the fact of the matter is we have extremely secure elections in Georgia. The level of convicted voter fraud in Georgia is infinitesimally small. So when we're thinking about election security policy changes, we have to think about them in terms of ballot access. We have to find that balance between access and security. And I think as lawmakers, we have to be very careful about finding that right line.
Okay. I want to talk to you about a bill you have that would see, you want to see an end to runoff elections, and that candidates in this state must win 50% of the vote plus one. Talk about that.
Yes, so we have so many elections in Georgia, more than almost any other state. We are the only state that has a runoff both after the primary election and after the runoff election. So what my bill would do is reduce that 50% threshold that a candidate currently has to get in order to avoid a runoff. They would bring it down to 45. And what that accounts for is your elections where maybe you have 3 candidates, maybe one candidate gets 2% of the vote. They're not really a viable candidate, but it's enough to keep those other 2 viable candidates from reaching that 50% threshold.
Okay. So I want to ask you what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I respect Representative Draper very much. She has a lot of very good and creative ideas, and I'm intrigued by this one. I'm a little cautious. I know the runoffs get a lot of criticism, but I do believe they serve a useful purpose. So while I believe it certainly merits further study, I'm not exactly sure I'm in full support of it yet, but I do salute her for trying to come up with a way to save costs for communities.
Yeah, so a plurality is what you're looking for.
I am, and the majority of Georgians are actually for getting rid of runoffs. It ruins our Thanksgiving. It's extremely expensive, and when people come back for runoffs, a much smaller number of people come back than voted in the general.
Yeah, so there was a bit of runoff fatigue. I would like to say that in the last few years we've had that. I also wanted to talk about your bipartisan bill, HB 559. Yes. You hope will help voters with children 5 years old and under when it comes to going to the polls.
Yes. So I'm a mom of 3 small kids. I know how hard it is just to even get out of the house sometimes. When I went knocking on doors as a candidate, I talked to other parents and said, have you voted yet? And they're like, do you hear the kids in the background? No, we haven't voted yet. So, I just don't think, and this is a bipartisan supported bill, as you mentioned, that should be an obstacle to getting to the polls. And the idea is simply, if you have a child, a baby, an infant, and you get to the polls and there's a long line, you can go to the front.
Okay, what do you think of that?
Well, I like the idea. We voted it out of committee last year. It just wasn't able to make it to the floor. But, I'm supportive of that bill.
Okay. I want to talk to you about what you were busy doing about 6 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more than that, in December when we had the special session to deal with redistricting. And so since that time, of course, we know that the maps have been approved by a federal judge. I'm thinking you're feeling pretty good about things right now.
I was a little tough to live with a few days after the order came down. I appreciate Judge Jones very much for ruling the way he did. We certainly were trying during session to make sure we complied, to read his order carefully and comply, because I respect Judge Jones very much, and I certainly respect the authority of a federal court. So it was gratifying for him to find that we had complied.
Did you hold your breath a little bit, waiting to see?
I did. There were a lot of arguments against the things we were doing, and I started to question myself a little bit, but I was pleased that Judge Jones came back and said he thought we had done what he wanted.
All right, Representative Draper?
I just think there's a bigger question that's raised here. It's whether politicians should be the ones drawing these maps. There's very clear conflicts of interest. There's very clear partisan gerrymandering, which under our current constitution, or under the current SCOTUS, is allowed. So, do we really want politicians choosing their voters, or should be voters choosing their politicians? Those are things we could change if we wanted to.
Yeah. Anything else on redistricting? I know that there's still some things in the works, right?
Yes, ma'am. The Judge Jones's original order, which we complied with, has been appealed. And so we're still in the course of appealing the original ruling.
Can you talk about what that is, the appeal is? What are they appealing?
Well, they're appealing his finding that the original districts that we drew in 2021 did not comply with the Voting Rights Act. So we've appealed that ruling. That's going to take several years to work its way through the courts, I imagine. But we went ahead and did comply with the order during special session, but the bill that we passed does have a provision that would revert back to the 2021 districts if we do prevail at some point with that appeal.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand that is still a possibility,
yes,
right?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It definitely is.
Yeah, and that'll get you working again. Will a special session need to be in place again?
It depends on when, first of all, if that happens, and then when it happens. So we might have to have a special session, but we might not. It just, we won't know till we get there.
Okay, and we'll keep you up to date on it. I want to thank both of you for being here today. Thank you so much. Coming up, a bill to go after people who stand around and watch illegal street racing and those who put on the exhibitions. It goes beyond the law, criminalizing the drivers.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
People put their faith in PBS because they know that it is constantly delivering quality. It covers the whole of the United States. It's a free and independent media.
We go where the viewers are.
What are the conversations that are happening right now?
We feel that civil discourse is a civic responsibility.
What we do is authentic reporting that people can trust.
We give time so you can hear voices on all sides of an issue.
This is the place that people turn to for stories that matter.
And they know that when they walk away, they will have learned something about the world around them.
That's why this makes PBS important for daily life and, in the end, our world.
Thank you for joining us.
Community. Learning, working, playing, celebrating, doing life is always better together. At GPB, we aim to provide you with the tools to be able to do life together well. Our mission to educate, inform, and entertain inspires everything from our wide range of programming to our stimulating radio conversations to our fun in-person events. We've got something for everyone. Visit gpb.org/community to learn more about our upcoming events.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. Let's dig into several topics with our guests from the Senate. Republican Senator Frank Ginn of Danielsville. He's chairman of the Senate State and Local Government Operations Committee, fondly referred to under the Gold Dome by the SLOGO acronym. And Democratic Senator Emanuel Jones of Decatur. Among other things, he's on the Senate Appropriations Committee, along with Chairman Ginn. So welcome to Lawmakers, to both of you. So, Senator Jones, I'm going to start with you. In 2021, you successfully passed through a bill that allows the state to suspend the driver's licenses and actually seize the vehicles of people convicted of reckless stunt driving. Right. And you have a bill along those same lines right now. It's SB 10. Tell us about it.
The difference between the bill is that this new bill, SB 10, allows for cars that are high performance to have a special license plate. It also allows for law enforcement to impound those cars if they're caught laying tracks or drag racing. And there's a provision in there that those that participate in these kind of events can be held accountable as well.
Yeah, why go a little bit further on this? What has happened since 2021 with that law?
Well, the activity hasn't stopped. I've spoken to lots of members from law enforcement, and they've shared with me on many occasions that we didn't go far enough. And my original bill 2 years ago had some of these provisions in it, but as it moved through the committee, these provisions were stripped out.
Yeah, so it's bipartisan in terms of a lot of support on it. So you're feeling pretty good about something like this? I know the other one you had, it was in memory of somebody who was injured because of a car, right? I think that was your bill. Maybe I'm mixing that one up. So, okay. But you feel pretty good about it.
I do.
All righty. And how do you feel about that bill?
Well, you know, I supported Senator Jones in his bill a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that when we start looking at, you got to take away the opportunity for people to profit off this. And a lot of people are using that to, you know, sell ads, sell the things that to me, I'm not sure what the best solution is, but I will tell you that our State Patrol does a tremendous job of working with the local law enforcement to go after these speeders. And that's where I want to brag on, Colonel Hitchens and what we're doing on the law enforcement side, because when you catch them and you lose your driver's license, you lose your vehicle, it gets real expensive. And that's where, for me, we've got to show that we can stop this, and working together we can do it. And that's where I'm glad to be working with Senator Jones to do bipartisan work on this.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that you're agreeing on that. Chairman, again, I want to get back to the topic of elections with you from the previous segment. You have some thoughts on the historical context of voting in Georgia. Talk about that.
Well, you know, it's really interesting for me, Donna. I've been a city and county manager for about 20 years. I started off when we were using NCR paper and voter registration cards you'd fill out, and it told everything from your mother's maiden name to your eye color and maybe even your weight. I don't know what we could do to embarrass you more. But for me, I looked at what we've done, and, you know, I was an old 4-H'er, and in 4-H, we try to make the best better. And this week, I had several conversations with folks in the Secretary of State's office and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger about our elections and what we're doing to improve things. One of those that I was listening to Chairman Rob Elliott, and you know, when I look, putting that watermark on there is important. It's a visual effort that's there. And when I also look at some of the things that I am going to help to push, because I handle that part of the budget, is we're not just going to depend on the QR code. In 2 seconds, I can make a QR code of our contact information on you. Whether it's right or wrong, I can't read it, you can't read it, but I tell you what, we can still read, and the voter can read that ballot that they fill out, and it prints. And that's where what we are going to do is we're going to fund election equipment that can read the written text of that and audit every one of these elections from the city council all the way to the president. And that's important. That's one of the things that I hope to be pushing for in this year's budget. It's expensive. You know, it's going to be close to $5 million to do that. But when we look at a state that what's free and fair elections worth to us, it's our future.
Yeah, we've come a long way from hanging chads and things like that with the electronic voting, certainly for that. So, okay, so we'll keep up to date on that. I'm going to change gears again, and now we're going to talk about another bill of yours. And you had another bipartisan bill, SB 371, aimed at helping law enforcement officers seriously injured in the line of duty. And the bill is named for Daniel Peduzzi.
Corporal Paziali.
Paziali. Okay. Tell me what happened with him first.
Tragic incident that happened in Henry County, a county that I represent. He was engaged with a suspect over in the city of Hampton, and he was shot several times. Almost lost his life. But during the time that he was recovering from his injuries, there was a press conference held by members of law enforcement because they were raising funds. And the whole thrust of all of that was to try and make Officer Paziali whole. A lot of police officers, yes, they do provide police services to our communities, but they also have other part-time jobs as well. And the sad part about this incident is that while he was recuperating from his injuries, his families were suffering financially.
Yeah. So as I understand it, you want to make sure they're compensated when they're injured like that. What does the bill do?
Well, currently, if a police officer or peace officer is injured, they get workers' comp, and that pays them 66% of their pay. My challenge was to find the other 34% that the state could cover an officer in the event that they were injured. And this is a very narrow cover-up, by the way, because it only involves those officers that are in pursuit or engaged with a suspect and have injuries.
Yeah, and he still has shrapnel in his body, right?
He does.
Yeah, so he's still, this could be a long road to recovery. But bipartisan support, you feel pretty good about this bill?
I do. As a matter of fact, the chief sponsor of the legislation is Senator Brian Strickland, my colleague from Henry County. We met with Officer Paziali and his family, as well as Sheriff Scandrett as well. And just to hear his story and for him to tell us how he was impacted touched all of us in a very, very significant way. And I believe that this is the very least that we can do at the General Assembly. And the way that Senate Bill 371 was crafted is that I found another account for peace officers. It's an identification account under DOAS, Department of Administrative Services. That account is rarely used by peace officers. They didn't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the bill basically directs workers' comp to reach out to the identification account and ensure that that other difference in their pay would not be paid by workers' comp, but it would be paid by this identification account that's already available that we fund in the General Assembly every single year.
Yeah, and I know you like this bill.
You know, what we got to do to keep our law enforcement folks working, compensate them when they are working, but when they get injured, we got to take care of them.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll keep up on that bill. Let's get back to some more things with you in terms of, you have a bipartisan bill, I believe. It's SB 122. It's not your bill, but you are a co-sponsor on it. It is a comprehensive elections bill. There's a lot to it. So you kind of touched on a little bit of it earlier. Talk about more.
Well, when we look at elections, you know, you want to make sure that not only do the voters get to choose who they're there, but, you know, I think as Stalin was quoted as saying, it doesn't matter how you vote, it matters who counts. And for me, when we look at what's going on and you know, I deal with people daily that don't believe the elections. One of the things I'll tell you what was great, I was telling somebody the other day, Chairman Brass, our Rules Committee chairman, gave a very eloquent speech a few years ago on the Senate floor. And when he got to the end of his speech, he said, you know, I wish I could take credit for that speech. I didn't write that speech. I had that speech was given 4 years earlier by one of our other colleagues in the Senate, and it was about the presidential race and the fact that there was mistrust or some questions about what was going on. And you know, that's not where we want to be. We ought to have where nobody has any question about the integrity of our election, and that's where, for me, I want to do everything that we can to make that reality here in Georgia. I'll continue to work with Secretary of State Raffensperger or whoever the next Secretary of State is. And you know, I think that I was really, really proud to see what he's doing right now. Some of the things that he's doing in that office, believe it or not, out of 50 states, we're number 2 in election integrity. And that's pretty impressive record. I'd like to be number 1, but the fact that we're number 2 across the nation is pretty impressive.
But you still want to make some changes.
The old motto of 4-H, make the best better. We can continue to improve, and we must, because you know, there's always somebody that's out there trying to do a little different twist to it. You know, I'm scared to death about AI. You heard about last week, somebody sent out robocalls basically from the president saying, don't vote in this election. You know, we don't know where the next threat's going to come from. It could come from internally in our state. It could come from other states, other countries. And that's where, to me, free and fair elections are critical for our future of our republic.
Now, that bill has a lot of support by the majority party. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it.
Not very familiar.
Okay.
But in terms of election integrity, that's important to all of us, not just those on the Republican side, but also the Democrats as well. Okay. And certainly I'm open to looking at any legislation that's going to ensure that our election is going to be fair, and also ensure that everyone is going to have an opportunity that's eligible to vote, and that's important.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for being here today. Great. 2 senators had 2 representatives. That does it for Lawmakers Today. We'll be back with a full show on Monday, but tomorrow tune in for Lawmakers. The Capitol Report is at the end of PBS NewsHour. I'm Donna Lowry. Have a great evening.